They've been called illegals, occupiers, invaders. And Donald Trump made a promise to his MAGA base to build a deportation machine on the scale the United States has never seen before. But behind the rally cries, the plan is already slamming into a wall of reality. The truth is, the deportation machine isn't just facing a few bumps in the road. It's fundamentally built to fail. This isn't just about politics. It's about three massive bottlenecks that turn a grand promise into a logistical fantasy: resources, law, and politics. Hi, I'm David Tomsic. Thanks for joining me. Now, as many of you already know, Donald Trump has been at war with people of color for many years. This particular administration, it's gotten worse. He has pretty much revoked any laws dealing with diversity, equity, and inclusion. The civil rights movement of the 60s pretty much is done in his mind. They never happened. It doesn't exist. If you're white, you're okay. If you're brown, you're out. Now, we know that's happened to blacks in America, but immigration is another whole world. And Donald Trump is definitely trying to roll back the tide there. He's trying to eliminate 11 million immigrants. We're going to talk about how real that is. No, I believe his plan to deport illegal immigrants will fail. It was built to fail. It was baked into the cake. He may not realize it, and maybe his staff does not realize it, but it will fail, and I'm going to talk about why today. Now, first, let's talk about Trump's promise to his MAGA base versus the reality. The core promise is audacious: remove millions of undocumented immigrants. The blueprint's heavily influenced by proposals from groups like Project 2025, a very far right-wing radical group. Call for massive operation using every tool on the table. This includes expanded, what they call expedited removal, a fast-track process typically used near the border, to apply to anyone, anywhere in the country, and enlisting local law enforcement to act as federal immigration agents. Now, before I move on, that's difficult from the start. Not every state will allow their law enforcement agents to participate. Trump's trying to force them to do it. But without their heart being in it, it makes it much more difficult to go out and find people, especially in blue states. Now, the goal is to create a high-speed deportation pipeline. But to see why that pipeline is destined to clog, you first have to grasp the sheer scale of it all. While estimates vary, and they do, recent analysis from groups like the Pew Research Center placed the number of undocumented immigrants at around 11 million. I have a little story to tell you. I ran across a young man, must have been in his 20s. He had a talk show. He was probably a very liberal guy. He was very intelligent. A MAGA person called, and they said there's 200 million illegal immigrants in the United States. He's making faces. It's a radio show, and he's going like this because it was crazy talk. Well, he said, well, then how many people live in the United States? He said, over 1 billion. Okay, so MAGA people, you show your stupidity every time you pick up a phone and call in somewhere. Let me just say that. There's up to 11 million immigrants, illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants in the United States. 11 million. Not a big percentage of people compared to our 320 million person population. And whatever the actual number is, I'm not sure of. Let's move on. Now, put that in perspective. In fiscal year 2024, a year with a significant focus on enforcement, ICE's enforcement and removal operation, it's called ERO, E-R-O. You got their own acronym for everything, don't they? Conducted about 271,000 removals. Now, the new goal isn't just to increase that number, it's to multiply it. An ambition that immediately collides with its first great failure: a staggering lack of resources. Now, you can imagine, my friends, trying to go door to door, store to store, farm to farm, and find people and deport them using everything you need: vehicles, personnel, a place to store them, a place to process them, court appearances. Okay, a lack of resources. So this brings us to our first bottleneck: the resource failure. A machine this huge needs things: money, people, and space. The administration is critically short on all three. First, the money. The price tag is astronomical. Listen to this, my friends. The American Immigration Council estimates that deporting just 1 million people a year would cost around $88 billion annually. A one-time operation to remove the entire population could cost upwards of $315 billion. To fund this, the administration pushed for massive budget increases. A law signed in July 2025, the big, beautiful bill. Remember that? I did videos on that. Please, there's links in the description box to those videos. Watch them. Has allocated an unprecedented $45 billion just for detention through the fiscal year 2029. But even these historic sums don't solve the other problems they create. This brings us to the second failure, manpower. ICE's deportation branch, IRO, has about 6,000 officers. To meet the new targets, some proposals aim to hire 10,000 new agents. But that's a huge challenge when law enforcement agencies nationwide are already struggling to recruit, and they are. One government report from just a few years ago reported that just to hire 10,000 officers, ICE would need to sift through 500,000 applicants. You just can't conjure up an army of agents overnight. 10,000 officers, you need 500,000 applicants. And keep in mind, who are they going to hire? How many of these people who want to join ICE are just pretty much racists themselves, who can't wait to beat up some poor immigrant and throw him in the back of a van? They're going to feel good. That's another danger here, which, again, is a rabbit hole I'm not going down today. Finally, there's a question of physical space. Where do you hold millions of people awaiting deportation? Before new funding, Congress had funded around 41,500 detention beds for ICE. The new plans, however, call for expanding capacity to over 100,000. To bridge that gap, the administration is looking at temporary tent facilities on military bases, like Fort Bliss in Texas. But these are just stopgap measures, my friends. The math is brutal. Detaining millions would require a sprawling network of new detention centers, a process that takes years, and $1 billion more than what was already requested. Now, the fundamental mismatch, ambition versus resources, means the machine is designed to stall. It promises millions of removals, but doesn't have the agents to arrest them, the space to hold them, and the money to pay for it all. So if you enjoy our content, please like, subscribe, and share our videos. We want to grow. We want to show people that we have a heart for America right here at the David Tomsic Show. By the way, if you like mysteries, legends, and myths, we have a sister channel called Nights Around the Fire. I have a link in the description box. It's a great channel where we tackle Bigfoot, UFOs, and all the mysteries in the world. It's hosted by myself, Ashley Hamilton, and Sue Taylor. You'll love the videos. Check it out. Let's get back to this video. So we're going to talk about the second bottleneck, the legal failure. Okay, even with unlimited money and manpower, the deportation machine would grind to a halt against the biggest obstacle of all, the U.S. legal system. We know that Trump's already faced this by forcing people out of the country without due process. As I mentioned, the cornerstone of this legal failure is due process. Under U.S. law, most people facing deportation have the right to a hearing before an immigration judge. That's not a right you can just wish away. And the court system is already completely overwhelmed. As of mid-2025, the immigration court backlog has exploded to over 3.6 million cases, with people waiting an average of 4 to 5 years for a court date. Throwing millions of more new cases into this collapsed system would just slow it down. It would cause a total meltdown. Now, to get around this, the plan's supporters advocate for dramatically expanding expedited removal, a fast-track process that bypasses the courts. Historically, it's used for people caught near the border shortly after arriving. This is a strategy that's already facing immediate and significant legal challenges in federal court. This, I hope, won't stand because, again, it's against our Constitution. It's the wrong thing to do, as Donald Trump pretty much does all the time, the wrong thing to do. Then there is the controversial idea of using U.S. military for domestic law enforcement. The Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 generally forbids using federal troops to provide civilian law enforcement. Now, legal experts argue that invoking it for immigration raids would be an unprecedented and legally explosive use of presidential power that would be challenged instantly in court. While the administration can expand partnerships with local police, these agreements are voluntary and often face stiff resistance from communities. I mentioned that, making them an unreliable tool for a nationwide dragnet. Think about that, a nationwide dragnet. In short, the legal strategy is to perform an end run around the very system designed to handle those cases. A plan guaranteed to get tied up in court for years, defeating the whole point. Now, we know this is illegal. We know that we have protections under our Constitution. Everybody does. For just this purpose, that some dictator doesn't come around and try to do an end run around our rights. This just doesn't affect illegal immigrants. This will affect all of us in the long run. We've got to stand for our rights. This brings me to bottleneck 3, the political and economic failure. The final breaking point is when all these logistical and legal problems spill out into the real world, creating economic and political consequences that would be impossible to ignore. And we know that's already happening. The economic shock would be immediate and severe. Recent estimates suggest that there are around 8 million undocumented workers in the U.S. labor force. They are deeply embedded in critical sectors. Some analysts say they include up to 1.5 million construction workers and over 1 million hospitality workers. Removing millions of people from the workforce wouldn't happen in a vacuum. It would trigger crippling labor shortages, drive up costs on everything from food to housing, and likely spark major inflation. Various economic models project that a mass deportation effort would shrink the U.S. GDP by trillions of dollars over a decade. I've talked about this on many of my programs. Please go back and check them all out on the David Tomsic Show on YouTube. Beyond the sticker shock and human cost, millions of U.S. citizens, including an estimated 4.4 million children, live in mixed-status families with at least one undocumented member. A mass deportation campaign would cause widespread family separations on an unimaginable scale. Furthermore, advocates aligned with Project 2025 have pushed to eliminate policies that discourage enforcement in sensitive locations. You might ask, what are those sensitive locations? Like schools, hospitals, and churches. Let's yank them off of life support. Let's yank them out of schools. Let's go to their church and drag them out of there and throw them into a van. The political fallout from images of raids at schools or parents being torn from their children who are citizens would create a crisis that no administration could easily contain. Now, the combination of economic self-sabotage and humanitarian crisis creates an ultimate bottleneck, a political reality where the consequences of the plan become far more damaging than the problem it claims to solve. This is absolutely true, and I'm telling you this. It will create a crisis unprecedented in American history. For what? For people who want to come here for a better life. We all did. All of our grandparents did. People have done this for decades, since the beginning. And all of a sudden, we want to stop it. Because guess what? They're brown. We don't like them. They don't speak English. They should do what we do. They should become white and speak English, right? That's what we want of them. We'll get people and bring them in from white countries, but not from brown countries. Not from countries who are torn by war or famine. We don't want them. Don't bring us your huddled masses. Don't. We don't want them. Right? That's the American way. So where does this leave us here in America? Now, the promise of the largest deportation in American history is a powerful political statement. It got Donald Trump elected. Millions supported him for it. But recently, this policy's under fire, even by many of his supporters. They now realize he's deporting everybody, anybody, whether they're citizens or not. He's deporting them because they're brown. Now, these radical policies are showing in his popularity polls across the nation. People are tired of it already. More will come to our side as they realize that this isn't benefiting anybody, that we're not going to make any great gains because we've deported 11 million people. In fact, it will harm us. It's a machine that needs more agents, more money, needs more jail cells. But as a policy, deporting 11 million people is built on a foundation of fantasy. It's a machine that needs more money, agents, and jail cells than the country is willing or able to provide. It's a machine that tries to bypass fundamental legal rights, guaranteeing it will get bogged down in the very courts it wants to avoid. When you look past Donald Trump's rhetoric at the nuts and bolts of it all, the conclusion is clear. The idea of a mass deportation operation makes a powerful political campaign. But in the real world of governing, it's a machine that's structurally, legally, and politically built to fail. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to love your neighbor as yourself, and I'll see you next time right here on the David Tomsic Show.